methods.
How do you talk to kids about terror? And with social media and television, it's everywhere, and it's unavoidable for kids.
Rusty Lozano is the founder of the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy. He's also been nationally recognized for his work with brain mapping.
He's created a gym to work out the mind. His office features an obstacle course.
Rusty Lozano is a licensed professional counselor, helping children with headaches, with anxiety, ADHD, and more.
Here's where Lozano comes in. He teaches kids how to think their pain away with something called biofeedback.
A North Texas therapist is treating patients in this unconventional way.
We have Rusty Lozano who's joining us today. He's a licensed professional counselor.
He put together an unusual treatment for teenagers who are struggling with mental issues, except he's taking this now a step further.
Rusty Lozano, a leading therapist and pediatric biofeedback therapist based in Texas at the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy. And Rusty, thanks for being with us tonight.
Rusty Lozano, a father of 4 and also a professional counselor in Texas, says it's all about being a credible resource to your children.
The Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, your dedicated resource for mental health news, views, and tips you can use. Brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas. And now, here's Rusty.
And good afternoon. Welcome to the Therapy Hour. I am Rusty Lozano, your host on Talk Radio 1190. On a hot Sunday afternoon, I was just telling my guests that we braved having a garage sale yesterday. It was terrible. It was just it was so insanely hot that even getting in, we have a hot tub and actually turn the heater off just to try to make it cool. And even trying to cool off then was even difficult to do. It was really terrible. But, yesterday while I was actually, my son and I were hanging out together, we had a conversation about, his future and the things that he has interest in. He's going to the School of Rock, and he's playing guitar, and he's really good. I mean, he plays, he'll bust out like a little song, and I'm like, do you know what that song was? I'll tell my wife, and I'll play it for her on YouTube, and it sounds just like it. Really neat. But he's kind of going through a phase where he's looking a little bit rock and rolly, and his hair is growing out, and he's dyed it, bleached it blonde, and so I had a conversation with him about 6th grade because he's going into middle school. He's feeling a little nervous about going into school, and we started talking about drugs and how friends that he knows and he's known will at some point start getting into things that might be a little bit questionable. And it's interesting because I think one of my first encounters with drugs, not that I personally did it, but I actually saw, in the restroom in middle school, a group of kids actually holding their hand out while another one was dibbing out marijuana into their palms. It was in 6th grade. Never seen anything like that before. I didn't even know what it was. And really, it was eye-opening. But it kind of leads, attention to a bigger problem. Drugs have always been an element here with our kids, but now it's actually, we're looking at an opioid epidemic. Opioid?
Yeah.
The opioid epidemic, or opioid crisis, is the rapid increase in the use of prescription and non-prescription opioids in the United States and Canada in 2010s. It's prevalent, and these are over-the-counter drugs. And so here to talk to us about this today is Joel Holliner. I'm going to introduce him. He's board certified in psychiatry as well as in addiction psychiatry. He's the executive medical director at HCA Medical City Dallas Green Oaks Hospital. He's chief of psychiatry at Medical City Dallas Hospital. And he's also the medical director of the Holliner Psychiatric Group in Dallas. Welcome to the show, Joel.
Thank you, Rusty. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. Joel was on the show last year sometime, and we've kept in touch. But this is a really important topic, and it was interesting. I was driving to work, and I even heard another show that was actually highlighting this exact same topic. But can you give us a scope, the listener audience? What's the scope of the epidemic?
Well, it's Rusty. This is a major public health problem. It's a real emergency. I view it as kind of the HIV of our time. In the 80s and 90s, we had all these problems with HIV, and it still is obviously an issue. This is like that. People are dying, and it's out of control, and we don't know what to do about it. So, for instance, America is 4.6% of the world's population. 4.6%. Yet we use 80% of the world's opiates. These pain pills, 80%. And if you look at hydrocodone, for instance, one specific one, we use 99% of the world's hydrocodone.
I've been prescribed hydrocodone after a procedure, either a dental procedure or something like that. So it's relatively prescribed often. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. It's prescribed like candy. I guess is a little bit of an exaggeration, but it is prescribed by doctors, well-meaning doctors, prescribing it for their patients day in, day out. But this created a problem. Now we have 2 million Americans that are addicted to opiate prescriptions. So when the doctors give it, sounds like you got off of it.
Sure.
Great. That's the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. They only gave me 5 pills, so I didn't have a choice.
That was really good. That's really good. Yeah. You didn't have a chance to get hooked on it.
Right.
Whether you wanted to or not. And of course you didn't want to, but
yes.
No one wants to. I mean, no one wants to have a drug problem, and but it does happen. And so we know that there are now more overdoses in America from different drugs like this than there are deaths from gun violence or deaths from car crashes. So more people die from opiate overdoses.
Those are massive.
It's out of control. It's out of control. Today there are 91 deaths a day from opiates, which is, if you do the math, that's about 33,000 a year. But it's even worse because it's rising. It's increasing. And it's estimated that the way it's rising, if it continues over the next decade, there will easily be 500,000 deaths from opiates. So it's an enormous problem. And half these deaths are due to prescription drugs like you got, when you went to a well-meaning doctor, gave you this medication, you get hooked on it, which happens far too often. And then half are due to heroin, which is obviously not prescribed. We'll kind of talk about how that.
Just to kind of bring something up, are you from Dallas?
Yes.
So in the 90s, there was a massive heroin epidemic in Plano.
Right.
And there were
adolescents.
Yeah, in adolescence, right. It was in high school. And it came in like a swarm. And I even remember being out and about in the 90s as a high schooler. And, you go to parties. That's what you do. What's what I did. And then there are the group of kids that are doing like the conventional thing, underage drinking, which, I'm not too proud of, but, we did. It's an experience. But then there was a group of kids that were actually doing something illegal. And I had a few of those friends. So I watched. And as a friend of mine pulled out little packets of this black tarry substance, and they were explaining, like, what it is. And, like, you want to do it? I'm like, no, absolutely not. I'll die. I'm like, you won't die. And I get a little bit of peer pressure, but not too much. But then he also whipped out some mushrooms. I don't know what they call them, shrooms. And it was, and all of it is, it all happened in the 90s. I mean, do you remember recalling that
I do, and not so, because I'm older, so I was sort of out of the loop. But however, with my friends, I treated a lot of those kids, and I'll never forget. I had this adolescent girl. It's one of my favorite patients. I guess you're not supposed to have favorite patients like favorite children, but there's some patients that you just really feel especially attached to, and this was just the sweetest, most beautiful young lady. She was 15 years old, and she was absolutely beautiful and talented. She could sing so beautifully. She was so bright and such. It was so interesting to talk to her. And she was using heroin. I was like stunned. Wow. This is in the night. I was just stunned. And I had her at Green Oaks in the hospital there, and I kept her extra long because I just was nervous that she was going to slip back into it. And we treated her, and she did so well, and she got out and did well for a while, and ended up relapsing, getting back with her friends, and she died from a heroin overdose. And I was just devastated that happened. So it does happen. It does happen, and no one wants it to happen. No one's taking these drugs to get addicted to them. No one's taking these so that they'll kill themselves or have their lives be out of control, but they fall into it.
They do, and it's hard to get out of. My wife and I personally know a family that has, she had a pretty supportive family, but some background issues with their family, and she was doing super well to maintain a horse barn that we're at, and her father had promised her the property. It was a house with 14 acres of land on Lake Grapevine. Beautiful. You could see the lake from the property, and all she had to do was just operate the horse barn, feed, hay, water, and maintain the business, and then eventually she would inherit that. Well, she got involved in drugs, and she got involved in, especially, I think it was heroin, and she lost it, and she started doing drugs. The father kicked her out of the house. Her sister got arrested. She came back, tried it again. He kicked her out again and says, you know what, that's it, I'm selling this place. And she lost everything. So I'm thinking to myself, here's this young lady with an awesome potential, an awesome opportunity, but even with the stakes that she had to inherit this massive piece of property, it's beautiful, and live her life just running that horse barn, living a great life, seemingly. I mean, I think it'd be a great life, but I don't know what she would think. But she lost it all because she couldn't kick this habit. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about this epidemic. Be right back.
The law offices of Franklin Frankel, they started their practice about 24 years ago. They can get you to a doctor and get you treatment even if you don't have health insurance. And they don't get paid unless you get paid. So you got no out-of-pocket costs. Franklin Frankel will take cases to trial when needed. That's why they have a team of trial attorneys. They'll fight and attempt to get you the most for your settlement. And I've referred friends to the Frankels before because I trust them. Partners Mark Frankel, Scott Frankel, and Gene Burkett were all recognized in 2015 and 2016 as Best Lawyers in D Magazine. Mark and Scott were selected Super Lawyers in 2015 and 16. Thomson Reuters service printed in Texas monthly. So whether it's car wreck, motorcycle wreck, or 18-wheeler wrecks, the Frankels can help. They make it easy. You can call and talk to an attorney, and the consultation, that's free. 1-800-LAWYERS. It's the law offices of Franklin Frankel. Their principal office is in Dallas, Texas.
Call 1-800-LAWYERS for personal injury cases. Franklin Frankel, proud supporters of the Russ Martin Show Listeners Foundation.
I had memory foams, I had feather pillows, and I'd always wake up with neck pain. After sleeping on my pillow, I didn't wake up with the headaches. I was more aligned.
I didn't realize the connection between the pillow and sleep. When I switched to my pillow, I got a better night's sleep, and I love it.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, inventor of MyPillow. My patented fill adjusts to your exact individual needs, and it holds that support all night long to take the pressure off your shoulders and keep your neck aligned so you get the best night's sleep of your life.
MyPillow is machine washable and dryable and comes with a 60-day money-back guarantee and an amazing 10-year warranty. Plus, every MyPillow is made in the USA.
I personally guarantee that MyPillow will be the most comfortable pillow you'll ever own.
MyPillow is now offering 50% off their 4-pack special, plus free shipping. Go to MyPillow.com or call 800-480-1941 and use promo code iHeart. That's 50% off plus free shipping. Don't delay. Order now.
Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 58 years old.
8 years into the disease was when all the light went out.
For me, it was heart-wrenching.
Looking into the eyes of somebody with Alzheimer's, sometimes you just don't see the person's soul is gone.
And it takes a toll on everyone. I mean, it's a depressing disease to watch unfold before your eyes.
She actually thought those of us who were caring for her and who loved her most were her worst enemies.
More and more responsibilities fell on my shoulders.
This disease just ravages a family.
It changes your life.
The magnitude of it is indescribable. My mother taught me to be in the moment.
We have to live in the moment with them.
And I'm going to be with that person right now in this moment, wherever she is.
Now is the moment to stop Alzheimer's disease. Call Bright Focus at 855-345-6237.
You're listening to the Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas.
Hello, and welcome back to the show. This is the Therapy Hour on Talk Radio 1190. If you're just joining us, we're visiting with Joel Holliner, and our topic today is the opioid epidemic. Tell us a little bit more about the scope of the epidemic, Joel.
Well, it's just vast, and so now we've got all these thousands and thousands of opiate addicted patients, and they occur more every day. As I mentioned, there's 2 million prescription opiate addicts in America, and then all the heroin addicts in addition. And we think of heroin as the addictive thing, right? Not pain pills as much.
Yeah.
But when you look at the heroin addicts, 4 out of 5 of them started with pain pills.
So do these pain pills have the same effect as the street drug?
They really do. They do. That's the problem, is that they are also addictive. They don't get you high as quickly sometimes as heroin does.
Right.
But it's the same exact idea. And if you take more and more of them, you do. So it's really the same. You think, oh, they're just prescription pills. Or sometimes you get them just on the streets and buy them that aren't prescribed, of course.
Right.
That tends to happen, too, over time. I have patients that I find have gone to 5 different doctors getting these pain pills.
Wow.
So there's no one doctor that's going to give them as many as they want to take.
So they'll go to different doctors for the same prescription and get 5 prescriptions filled?
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. And they probably didn't really need any of them for pain. They make up symptoms, or they had symptoms. They continue or have chronic pain, but it's just gotten out of control.
I mean, they qualify, but you're going to different resources just to get more of the product.
That's right. That's right. So sometimes they need it, sometimes they don't, but definitely they're addicted.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be addicted. It just tends to happen over time, where you develop tolerance.
Yeah.
Where it takes more of the medication to have the feeling.
Yeah.
Or then you get dependent on it. And dependent is where you have to take this medication, or you have withdrawal symptoms.
So let me throw a curveball here. What would happen? So when a person goes to rehab and they're detoxed and then they're prescribed, there's a synthetic type of heroin that they prescribe a patient who's in rehabilitation. How would they use the same types of medication, do you think, to offset an addictive pattern like they do with somebody coming off of heroin? You know what I'm asking?
Yeah, totally. So it kind of is counterintuitive. So it on the surface it may not make sense at first. So the idea is that you're giving a potentially addictive drug, or something that sounds addictive, to a patient who has an addiction problem. So you're giving a narcotic medication to a patient who's abusing narcotics and opiates. However, the way it works is that you're giving a medication that has a blocker with it. So it's an opiate and it's a blocker, so that it doesn't get you high, and it's the kind of medication that it keeps you from going into withdrawal and craving and needing to get more of the medication, or feeling like you need to get more of the medication, but without getting high. And it also helps with pain if you have chronic pain.
It's just to feel normal.
So that's it. You feel normal. That's the way patients describe it.
Wow.
And these are called buprenorphine products. Buprenorphine is the name of that drug, and then they combine it with naloxone, which is a blocker. So with that combination, it's fantastic. It's miraculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it sounds like I'm overstating, but I don't even think I am overstating because it's so amazing how patients can have their lives so out of control. And I had one guy who came in, and he had just lost his job. His wife had kicked him out of the house. His children won't talk to him because he kept abusing heroin. He couldn't stop. He wanted to stop. He had everything to lose. He did lose everything, and he hated that, and he wanted it all back. And he came and said, "I'm desperate. I don't know what to do. I've been in 3 rehabs. Wow. I get detoxed. I get out. I go right back. I don't know what to do." I put him on these buprenorphine products.
Yeah.
One of them is named Suboxone. That's the one I put him on. I put him on Suboxone, and he said, I can't believe it. I'm not craving. I feel like myself. I'm not high anymore, but I'm just okay. He was able to get a job.
Wow.
His wife let him come back after about a year.
Yeah.
His wife let him come back. His kids now talk to him. He's very happy. And so he now works in a candy factory. So every year he brings me a box of candy on the anniversary of his sobriety.
Wow, Joel, that's a great story.
And there's a lot of stories like that because it is a fantastic way to treat patients that are, whose lives are out of control.
So, I mean, it really sounds like there's a lot of technology out there that's starting to kind of keep up and make some impactful differences.
Oh yeah, there's a lot we can do. It's not a hopeless situation. I've had so many patients who have been in multiple treatment facilities, really good facilities, and gotten good care, but they relapse. And relapsing is part of the nature of addiction processes. Not everyone relapses, but most people do relapse some. And so if anything you can do to minimize that relapse with these new medications and new therapies and so forth, it's very important to utilize.
But let me ask you something. You're a psychiatrist. So how would people know to go to a psychiatrist to receive medications like this? I mean, is that usually a normal stop for somebody who's trying to become sober or to rehabilitate themselves?
Well, that's an important area, Rusty, because not these buprenorphine products.
Yeah.
The government requires special training in it and a license, and they limit the number of patients that a doctor can treat on them. And so there are really relatively few doctors that even prescribe these buprenorphine products. Mostly they're psychiatrists. Sometimes there are other doctors that have a strong interest in addiction. So it can be one of those doctors. But it's the kind of thing where if there's an opiate problem and you want to evaluate it, I think an addiction psychiatrist or a psychiatrist that works with a lot of addiction is a great way to start. Or there are physicians that are addiction specialists that aren't psychiatrists, and that's also would be a good way to do it. But I wouldn't just go to a family doctor unless they have extra training and understand about utilizing these drugs. Or even therapists are great, psychologists, licensed professional counselors are fantastic. They're fantastic, but they can't prescribe that specific kind of medication. They would need to refer to someone that does prescribe those medications.
They would need to know somebody also that is a specialist in this kind of medication.
Right.
You mentioned Green Oaks Hospital. Can you tell us a little bit about how that place works?
Well, yeah, I'm the medical director of Green Oaks.
Yes.
And it's a full-service psychiatric hospital in Dallas, treating adolescents and adults, and we treat general psychiatric problems and addiction problems also. So we use these buprenorphine products in the hospital day in, day out, taking care of the patients in the hospital.
So is that an option for people to go and seek out help if they're, I mean, how does one get into Green Oaks? Isn't it an acute center? Or?
It is. It's on the campus of Medical City Dallas Hospital.
Yeah.
And it's right there in North Dallas. So what we do, I'd say, is either you're referred by, your physician or your counselor to the hospital, or you could go right to the hospital, and they have assessment teams who assess and determine whether you need to be in the hospital, need an outpatient psychiatrist, need an outpatient therapist, need a day program. We have that available too, intensive outpatient, whatever level of care you need, and we'll put you in that program.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, and there's no charge for it, and they have great expertise in trying to help you determine where you need to go to get the help you need.
Yeah. And you and I have had some in common patients in the past. In fact, like there was a family. I've first heard about you probably over 6 years ago when I'd sent a patient over to Green Oaks and they'd met you, and the mom spoke really highly about you. So it's really nice to know. Tell us a little bit about who misuses opiates, Joel.
Well, there's so many people that misuse it that it gets into one of those situations where it's kind of basically I could start off with anybody whom opiates are prescribed more than a brief period of time. So when you went to the doctor, they gave you 5 pills. I'm just applauding that doctor and applauding you for not trying to talk the doctor into, giving you more and more. But anyone that uses more than a brief time really is considered a potential abuser and potential risk. But if you look at who historically has the highest percentage of having problems is if you have a history of substance abuse. So if you have a history of substance abuse already, whether it's alcohol or opiates or other drugs, then you are at a much higher chance of developing problems with pain pills, with these narcotic opiate pain pills. If you're depressed, you have a much higher chance of developing addiction problems to pain pills.
Wow.
Yeah, they found that 51% of patients that get addicted to these opiate pain pills have a mood disorder problem.
Is that because, like in depression, you want to feel something, and this maybe has an impact on how you feel? I mean,
I think that's probably a factor. You just want to change something. You want to feel better somehow. And these pain pills do affect mood. And some people, they improve mood. They're a terrible treater of depression.
Right.
They create so much more depression by all the chaos in your life if you get addicted, and how challenging that is. But they temporarily, one will feel better when they're on pain pills sometimes. I have many patients that won't stop their pills because they say they feel depressed if they get off their pain pills. They get addicted to them and have problems. Also, if you use any psychiatric medications, a history of any psychiatric medication use, there's more chance that there will be an addictive problem. Probably also trying to self-medicate with these pain pills instead of focusing on the medicines that will really help you more, that are made for mood and aren't addictive.
Interesting. So if you, excuse me, if a person is actually starting to feel something, and you're talking about the people who misuse the opiates, what would be some of the warning signs that maybe you would think that, and we may have to actually talk about this at the break because we're coming up on a 1 minute marker, but like how would somebody know that it's time to, like, let's say a person who's depressed takes the medication, uses these opioids, and they start to feel differently. At what point would somebody know it's time to seek out help? We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Therapy Hour on Talk Radio 1190.
Hi, it's Fisher, the Radio Root Sleuth, host of Extreme Genes Family History Radio. Every week right here, we bring you the latest on how to dig up your dead, plus amazing stories of discovery and expert guests. Maybe we can help you find who you're looking for.
Tune in to the Extreme Genes Radio Show, hosted by Scott Fisher, Saturday evenings at 6 p.m. on Talk Radio 1190. If you're interested in finding out where you came from, listen to Extreme Genes Radio.
Texas. It's a big state with a whole lot of wind blowing around. What can we do with all that wind? Or what do you say we power all of our homes with pure 100% wind energy? At Breeze Energy, we're totally 100% green. We don't do coal or nuclear, and we never will. So why not go with the wind? Go to breezeenergy.com. We think you'll see we're a genuine breath of fresh air.
At 24 Hour Fitness, we have workouts to suit every side of you. Yoga for your inner guru, treadmills for your inner track star, dance classes for days you want the spotlight, and high-intensity circuits when you're fired up to get things done. And since our studio classes are included with membership, you can take whatever you want at no extra cost. So whether you're feeling fierce or simply finding your flow, make every side of you happy by joining the club today. Facilities, classes, and amenities vary. Not all clubs open 24 hours.
It takes a lot of work and work zones to keep I-35 moving. Please slow down and stay alert in work zones. Keep in mind that fines double when workers are present. To plan ahead and avoid delays, visit my35.org. A message from TxDOT. Be safe, drive smart.
In small towns and big cities around the world, Habitat for Humanity volunteers gather. Hammers are raised, bricks are laid, and another family finds shelter in a home they help build. Habitat volunteers are changing lives for the better, and in the process, maybe even their own as well. Support the work in your community or wherever your heart leads you. Volunteer, get involved, and help build it. Visit us at habitat.org.
You're listening to the Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas.
Hello. We are back. You're just joining us. This is the Therapy Hour on Talk Radio 1190. We have Joel Holliner, and we're discussing the opioid epidemic. Joel, how did all this start, and who is to blame?
Well, I hate to just say blame, but there really are some responsible parties that contributed, of course. Let's start with the pharmaceutical companies. The pharmaceutical companies came out in the 1980s with oxycodone and hydrocodone, these pain pills, and they marketed the heck out of them. And they came and they told doctors, look, this will help your patients. You'll help them with pain. If you want to be a good doctor, basically you need to prescribe these medications. You don't want your patients to suffer, of course.
Right.
And the great thing about these is they were very effective, and they were. But they said, and there's very little addictive potential to them. There's just minimal addictive potential to them. So that's one of the great things. They're safe, and your patients won't have any problems.
Isn't that what the tobacco industry did in the 1950s?
Ah, there you are.
It was actually like a vitamin.
That is so true. Where they had there were ads in the 1950s for tobacco where one of them I will never forget said, "Physicians prefer Camels." Physicians for Camel,
Really?
So they had 3 out of 4 physicians recommend this, so it's just ridiculous. Same kind of marketing.
Wow.
So certainly the pharmaceutical companies bear their share of responsibility.
So they're saying it's not addicting; it can help your patients, and so they're pushing it. And I'm sure a physician is willing and ready to try out new things, and they're open to it.
Right. We all want to help our patients, so sure, that's great. And they were very effective for pain. They were very effective. The problem was they're minimally addictive was not the accurate part, and that certainly contributed. But I'd say physicians don't get off scot-free either,
right?
Because physicians, we want to help our patients. Of course, we don't want them to suffer. We want to do the right thing, and we have so many patients with chronic pain. There are 100 million Americans with chronic pain of some kind or another. So, there's just a lot. There's a ton of pain out there. So we want to treat it. However, we overprescribed. I mean, as we look at it, we have overprescribed. And that doctor that gave you 5 pills when you were in pain is rare. That's a gem. I mean, that was back then. Back then. Now it's going to be more common because doctors are much more aware of it. But doctors I see all the time patients come in, and they've gone to an emergency room. They had maybe a knee injury. They find out that there's no broken bones, and they're going to be okay. And they'll give them maybe a bottle of 30 oxycodone with a refill. Well,
wow.
They probably didn't really need that much, honestly. And maybe 5, 10 or something to help them get through, maybe, and then that's it. But they gave them a lot, and then they go see their primary care doctor. And they say, I'm on this oxycodone. Then the primary care doctor will refill it. And I see patients day in, day out that are on, say, oxycodone,
right,
and have been on it for 2 years. And I go,
wow,
why are you on this? And they go, my knee injury. I go, your knee injury was 2 years ago, and you're fine, and you didn't have surgery, and you're fine. You're not complaining of pain. They go, oh, the pain's gone, but I don't know. They just keep giving it to me, and I don't stop it. I kind of like it, or I tried it and I felt I had some withdrawal problems, so I just kept taking it.
We've seen the same thing kind of happen with Xanax too, where Xanax is prescribed as a normal everyday medication, but it's actually there's a strict name for it. I think they're called tablets, but they're also highly addictive, and they have their place, but that's scary how things like that can happen. I mean, it's
right. So as physicians, we need to reevaluate. Here I'm saying it's a good idea to see a doctor, a physician, for medication, but the doctor needs to have responsibility to get them on the appropriate medication and not overprescribe it. And then consider, does the patient still need to be on this medication? Is it time to start backing off and slowly wean off of the medication? If you stop it abruptly, you might have withdrawal problems, but you need to slowly wean it down, or just prescribe a little at the beginning so they don't have an addiction problem. But in 2000, they did a study in 2014, Rusty. There were 240 million opiate prescriptions.
Oh, my God.
I mean, I can't even say it with a straight face. It's so bizarre. That's enough for every adult in America to have a full bottle of pain pills.
Oh, my God. Wow.
I mean, it's really ridiculous. Since 1999, the number of opiate prescriptions has quadrupled, along with the number of opiate deaths, overdose deaths. Yet, when you do pain studies, there's not less pain in America. It's not like it's solving all these pain problems.
It's not really solving the pain at all.
It's not solving the pain problems.
It's actually creating a whole other epidemic.
It is. I mean, it does. I don't want to overstate it too much. I mean, there are some patients that definitely need opiate pain medications. They will need it chronically. That is definitely the case, but not nearly as many as are on it now. So the physician will need to continue to evaluate the need for the medication, use it for only the length of time, and then back off the medication when it's not needed. Absolutely, we've got to do that. Medicine has to do that.
So why would the pharmaceutical industry, knowing that it's and you probably can't answer this collectively for them, but why would they continue to produce that and prescribe OxyContin if it has such powerful addictive qualities?
Well, all those opiates are addictive, and there's the newer ones like fentanyl.
Yeah.
The synthetic ones. So some are kind of based more on natural products. Some are just totally made in a lab that hit the opiate receptors. And some of them are so powerful that they are killing people left and right because you mix fentanyl with heroin, which sometimes they'll do to make it more powerful. Drug dealers will do to make it more powerful. That you overdose them and they will die.
Wow.
People stop breathing because these depress the respiratory centers. And that's a main cause of death.
Wow.
But I don't think the pharmaceutical company, I think it's clear to say they don't want to kill anybody.
Right.
They're not meaning to hurt anybody. They're there to make money, and they're there to help people also.
Sure.
And that they know that some patients do need these, but there's got to be some reins put on. And the FDA is doing that now. They're starting to look at, there was a new pain pill that was, it just come on the market. It was a long-acting, extremely powerful pain pill, and the government looked at this. The FDA said, you know what, that one, just the benefits aren't powerful enough to outweigh the danger of that drug, and they just pulled it off the market.
Oh, wow.
So the government is getting involved now, and the drug companies aren't fighting that too much.
Right.
So it's a balance of finding medications that will help patients, but that aren't going to hurt patients and hurt society in general.
Yeah, and that's going to be like a weed pulling kind of a behavior where over time it's gonna take time to really try to find a compromise, or actually what am I trying to say? They're going to replace it with something else.
Right, or find a happy medium on this where you can use them but not overuse them. And I think that's where I blame the government also.
Yeah.
So we've talked about the pharmaceutical companies. We've thrown them under the bus. The physicians under the bus. Now let's blame the government. Let's blame the government. It's always easy to blame the government,
right?
And because really, they've tried with like border surveillance. Whatever you think about the wall and all that kind of stuff, that aside, so many drugs come over the border that is a real problem in America. The number of drugs here, there's thought to be there's 64 billion with a B in drugs that cross the Mexican border every year, and a lot of that are opiates. So the government, anything they can do to minimize the amount of drugs in America is better, because right now the cost is so low for drugs. You can get heroin that is less expensive than filling a prescription, an opiate prescription, and that's part of what's fueled the heroin epidemic.
Right. There is an alternative instead of having to get a prescription.
Exactly.
Just go out and get a street value for it.
Right, exactly.
And we're talking about, I'm thinking here, if this is a drug that's smuggled over, it doesn't take much. I'm sure that the quantity that they sell is very, very expensive for very little. Not like a big bag of weed. It's as big as a hay bale. But you're talking about maybe something that can be smuggled over in smaller amounts, and then to be distributed and make a lot of money.
Yeah, it's extraordinarily profitable, and a lot of drug cartels, made a fortune off of those drugs. And the government also has limited. I mentioned those buprenorphine products that are so amazing for many patients that have these opiate addictions. The government, has put all these limits, and there's so few doctors. So I think they need to encourage doctors to, get educated on those medications instead of just saying limiting them. They should increase the limits, which they've already started doing, as a matter of fact, and they should encourage doctors to be educated in using buprenorphine products. I really think anyone that's prescribing opiates pretty much should know about the alternatives of opiates and know about buprenorphine, because some of their patients are likely going to get addicted and either be able to prescribe it themselves or have a network of doctors to refer to prescribe medications if their patients do get addicted, and not be part of the ongoing problem in their patients being addicted. Another problem with the government is they haven't funded pain research very well at all. And there's some folks that will talk about medical marijuana and how important marijuana is,
but it's still a substance.
It's a drug, and I'm kind of against legalization and so forth. But I could be wrong. It may be fantastic for pain. We just don't know. There's been a few studies, but not great studies, not a number of studies that would really give us the answer. I was actually doing a TV show with a guy who was from California, and he had this clinic where they were using marijuana to detox off of all other drugs. Wow. And I thought, that sounds kooky, but maybe it's not
maybe
kooky.
There's something to it.
But there's not enough literature to know whether it's a silly idea or it's a great idea. And the government, instead of fighting marijuana, maybe needs to say, okay, we're going to hold off on our decision about marijuana, but let's do some research.
Right.
And let's see what happens. And let's look at studies to see, does it help with pain? Is it really important for anxiety? Is it really important for PTSD? Is it really important for other disorders that, anecdotal stories saying that it's helpful for? It might or might not be.
Yeah.
But we really need to have the funding to research that. And I think the government also needs to really work with hospitals and doctors and educate them. The government can do enormous things with financial incentives.
Right.
And encourage you to, right now they give you financial incentives to treat pain aggressively. You go into our hospital, we get surveyed like all hospitals by Joint Commission surveys, and they come in and they look at the patients with pain. Are you, every shift or just about, are you looking at their pain levels? What are you doing to treat their pain? Then it's just narcotics. They're kind of lean towards, treating them with.
Yeah, that's an interesting element. We'll be right back. Hold that thought on the Therapy Hour.
Local music in North Texas has a voice, and you can hear it Saturday nights on the local lounge. Join me, your host, Zach Killian, as I bring in musicians, directors, and local talent as they discuss humble beginnings, rock star moments, and how to make it in today's local music scene. It's the Local Lounge. Saturday nights from 7 to 7:30, only on Talk Radio 1190.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
You're unique, so why is your mattress one size fits all? Because a custom mattress costs thousands, until now. Hi, I'm Christian von Rickenbach, founder of HelixSleep.com, where you can buy a mattress online, customized for you, for hundreds of dollars instead of thousands. Go to HelixSleep.com, answer a few simple questions, and we build you the most comfortable mattress you'll ever sleep on. Shipping is free, and you have 100 nights to try it out. Go to HelixSleep.com/sleep and get $50 off your order. HelixSleep.com/sleep.
This is Tom Skerritt for the Borgen Project. Each year, nearly 2 million children die from preventable diseases. Each day, 30,000 people die from hunger. 500 each hour are children. The Borgen Project is turning this around. We need your help. To learn more, go to borgenproject.org. That's BORGEN project.org.
You're listening to the Therapy Hour with Rusty Lozano, brought to you by the Center for Biofeedback and Behavior Therapy in Addison, Texas.
Hello. We're back. This is the Therapy Hour on Talk Radio 1190. You're just joining us. We have Joel Holliner. He's the board-certified psychiatry as well as in addiction psychiatry. He's the executive medical director of HCA Medical City Dallas, Green Oaks Hospital, chief of psychiatry at Medical City Dallas Hospital, and the medical director of the Holliner Psychiatric Group of Dallas, in Dallas. And so as we were leaving on the segment, we really started getting into solutions. And a big part of it the discussion was on government intervention and things that the government can do to fund research and kind of make that more of a push to see what alternatives can be used to help offset the opioid epidemic.
Absolutely. The government can really do a lot of things besides just spend money. They can spend money focused and make it happen. It's okay. First off, they've got to shut down, and they're working on it, any of these pain mills, because I hate to say it, but there are some rare rogue doctors that just are giving out medications for patients that really don't need it, and they're doing it for profit. And you see in the newspaper every now and then that this they call them pain mills, are shut down. And I think that's really great that we need to continue to do that. I think the government needs to continue border surveillance with respect to these drugs and these cartel enforcement, and that will hopefully increase the price of heroin and
make it not as affordable.
Right. So that hopefully that folks, the addicts will think, maybe I'm better off getting treatment rather than to continue to use. Because it's just the cost is just too high. $64 billion of opiates cross the Mexican border every year. We talked about the research, more research for pain treatment. Let's learn about biofeedback in more detail. How does that help pain versus giving pain pills? Marijuana research would be great for us to get more information on that. We need to make naloxone. I don't know if you're familiar with this naloxone. Narcan, it's called, is a drug that's used like in emergency rooms. So someone comes in if they're had an overdose of heroin, for instance, or of pain pills, and they're going to die because they've stopping breathing and all that. You can give them an injection of this stuff called Narcan or naloxone, and it reverses it.
Wow.
We need to have that available. All first responders need to have that. The fire department people need to have that.
Is that like on that movie Pulp Fiction?
You know what? It actually kind of that same idea. I think they actually injected it into their heart, which you don't have to inject it to the heart. Yeah. But the same kind of idea concept. Because the same concept. She would have died.
Yeah.
It looked like if he hadn't done something. So it's not as that little poetic license there of jabbing it into the heart, but the idea of injecting it to the arm to have those available. And if you have, I think they should make those freely available.
Like an EpiPen or
really,
something.
like an EpiPen. You can get it at the pharmacy with, or maybe not even need a prescription. Be able to have that. So if you God forbid, have an uncle that's a drug addict that lives next door to you, and you can have that available, that you could save their life if you ever needed it. And now they're put into libraries. We'll have those sometimes. A lot of just kind of public places, like at airports that have defibrillators.
Right.
Maybe they need to have, this Narcan available to them.
So, do you think in an odd way that would actually like promote people's usage or make it kind of like normalize it?
I think it would do the opposite. Okay. I could be wrong.
Yeah, because it'd be a stigma. Oh, look, there's that person going.
I think it would emphasize how bad this is and how this can kill you.
Right.
And how to save your life you have to have this, and how many people die, and it would bring up the discussion of, 33,000 people are dying every year from these overdoses, and how bad it is, and how dangerous it is, and what treatment options are available instead. Maybe that's just wishful thinking.
Yeah.
But you're right. It could go either way.
Right. It could go either way. We just don't know.
Yeah.
There's not enough research out there that really.
That's right. And we need to have funding for drug treatment, funding for public education. We need to educate everybody about what's going on and what a problem this is. And
even like that would even go into the scope of trying to do early intervention with your own kids. Like the conversation I had with my son in the pool yesterday in the hot tub, and talking about he's going into 6th grade, so that he's aware going into an environment, a new environment, that when he sees things that he can identify what those are and identify what usage is and then when to say no.
That's right. And there's educating parents and how to talk to their kids, and we've done a pretty good job of smoking. The government's really helped with that, and it's been dropping even in young people. Smoking's been dropping. Mm-hmm. These commercials where someone has lung disease, can barely talk, and and cancers from it and all kinds of things that scare you about smoking.
Right.
Well, it'd be very easy to do that with patients that have drug abuse problems. You talk about what's happened to their lives and how they've lost their families and friends and health and have deteriorated, and every aspect of your life deteriorates when you have a problem with drug abuse.
Yeah, no, it is scary. It's very scary.
That's right. And then we also want the government to work with pharmaceutical companies to say, look, we don't want you to keep putting out things that are really addictive, these synthetic high potency narcotics, the fentanyls, the Opana ER, which is the one they just pulled off the market. The FDA just pulled off the market. They said enough is enough.
Yeah.
It's just too dangerous. And one other thing the government can do is, why don't we have a national data bank where they show every prescription that's filled in every pharmacy in the country, so that, because we have one in Texas and it's fantastic. Really? Yeah. So I have a patient that comes in that wants stimulant medication for ADHD.
Yeah.
And they describe it, and it sure sounds like they have ADHD, and I'll go look, and we pull up, every time we pull up the Texas data bank, and it is not infrequent. I'd say it's once a week that someone wants it. We look down, and they're prescribed that same medication by 4 different doctors.
Oh, wow.
So they're doctor shopping to get the medication. They either have the problem or don't have the problem, but they know what to say to get the medication to abuse or to sell. And so we need the same thing with narcotics.
Yeah, like almost like a pharmacy should be able to type up something, has this prescription been filled anywhere else, because it almost seems like if they're hopping around to different pharmacies, that if they're getting them filled in different places, that perhaps they can pull something up that says, "How this prescription has already been filled."
That's right. Well, we do have that in Texas.
Okay.
So it pulls up a lot of that, and that's been very helpful. And every now and then I'll get a call from a pharmacy. Say, "Doctor, did you know that Valium or that hydrocodone or whatever has been prescribed by 6 different doctors, and they're getting filled at different pharmacies and so forth, and they're going to." So we do catch it sometimes, but there's a lot of times where we don't catch it, unfortunately. So a lot of times we don't catch that. So if we can I think there needs to be a national data bank.
For this goes beyond Texas. I mean, everywhere.
Absolutely, because we're contiguous to all kinds of states. It'd be very easy to go across state lines and get prescriptions all over the place.
But what about like going across the border to get a prescription filled? Have you heard of people maybe going to Mexico and buying there may not be a limitation on how much they can get as compared to they can here?
Yeah, a lot of countries. I'm not sure how it is today, but I know when you travel, it's very interesting to see what pharmacies. Being a doctor, I always go into pharmacies whenever I go on vacation. It's kind of a quirky thing. I want to see what their pharmacies are like, what products they have. Do they sell the same products? Talk to the pharmacist and see what do they use as antidepressants, what do they use as different kind of drugs. And as my wife rolls her eyes when I do that, but I like doing it. And I'm stunned to see that in a lot of countries you can buy over-the-counter narcotics, you can buy over-the-counter many medications that we would have to have prescriptions here for. Yeah, I think most countries are starting to kind of tighten up a little bit more than they used to.
Right, yeah, and that's always good to know, because that's you don't want any trouble at the airport coming back anyways.
That's for sure. And by the way, I tell my patients, this is just probably something that might be helpful to our listeners, is that I tell my patients when they go to the airport and they take their prescriptions with them, carry them on. Don't put them in suitcases in case your luggage gets lost. Yeah. So always carry them on. And the second thing is always try to keep them in the original bottles. Because I've had so many patients that have gone through and had prescribed medications that they put in like in a little baggie. They take, okay, I'm going to be gone 3 days. I'll be gone 3 days, so I'm going to just put in, put 3 days worth of medication. What if I get late? I'll put it a 4th day just in case. I'll put in their medications, and then they're stopped. They're frisked. They see these drugs.
Yeah.
And it's a big deal, as you can imagine, particularly if one of them is Xanax or one of them is hydrocodone or one of their amphetamines because they have ADHD. It's a mess. So keep them in the exact bottle that you came with.
It's prescribed.
Yeah, so you can show it's prescribed. You don't have to take the full bottle, but take as many pills as you need with you. And again, carry them on so they don't get lost and they don't get. I've traveled to Mexico and I've had my suitcase that they do the X-rays. I had it split open and they took jewelry and medications that were in there in the past.
Oh, geez.
So it's that's not going to happen that often, I hope, but
it does.
It does happen. So don't pack jewelry in your suitcase either. By the way.
Yeah, not advisable for sure. Especially if they see it in the X-ray and they can spot it that way.
That's right.
Joel, we're coming up on about a minute left in the show. And you have just tons of great information. You always do. I'm always glad to have you on the show because you have a lot to share. Can you tell us a little bit about how people can go about getting in contact with you and how they can reach, get in touch with you and see if they can catch you at one of these centers?
Well, sure. It'd be my pleasure. My office is the Holliner Psychiatric Group, which is at Medical City Dallas Hospital, and my office number is 972-566-4591, and just call it. Let's set up an evaluation, and we would love to see it. And then we can decide what level of care you need. Is it outpatient? Is it re-looking at the medications? Is it getting on one of these buprenorphine products? Do we need hospitalization? Do we need day program? Do we need intensive out program? There's all kinds of options, but an evaluation will lead us to the appropriate level of care.
Yeah, and I think that's always a good thing to do as a first level is just to have that evaluation so we can know, Thank you so much for joining us today. You were listening to the Therapy Hour on Talk Radio 1190, and I want you guys to please keep in mind that there's always solutions. There are always solutions you can do to find help. Don't give up, and keep looking for the right chains of help. So thank you so much for being on, Joel.
Thank you for having me, Rusty.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.